A lot of people though will say, well, Lewis, I don't have anything to serve with. So shouldn't I want success first and then I'll find service, because I don't have my meaningful mission. I don't have any money. I don't have access. I don't have a platform. Shouldn't I aim to get a platform first and then serve through it? How do you think about that? And
I mean, you served for many years before you got your platform, you know, and then you built your platform after really kind of figuring out who you were, your identity after leaving the monkhood, right? You started to figure out what did you want. And I think there's a period of time, a season of life where we have to try a lot of different things and figure out, what do we really love? What are our passions? Where our talents lie in with our power? And then what is the problem we're looking to solve? So it's the 3 Ps. And you can ask yourself,
so the 3 Ps are passion, the power that you have, right,
and the problem you're looking to solve.
I love that.
So I give a lot of prompts and questions in the book around the 3 Ps, where you kind of figure out your sweet spot of what could I be doing? So the passions are, and a lot of people say, I've heard a lot of people say, don't follow your passion. I don't agree with that. I think you should be thinking about, what are you most curious about? What excites you? Whenever I ask people, what are you most excited about in your life right now? You mostly see people like look up in the sky and they take a deep breath and they get really excited and they're emotional about it. They're like joyful about it. You want to lean into that feeling and do those things and be in that playground of experiences. Yeah. So I think you really want to be thinking about, what is the things that I am most passionate about. And maybe it doesn't mean for a 2 to 4 year window of life, you're going to be able to work on it, but you can still be working towards it. So figuring out what interests you. What would you do if money was no object? What would you just love to wake up and do in general, and what excites you? Think about that. The second thing is, you know, when I was starting out, I didn't feel like I had any talents. So I can relate to a lot of people. When you left the monkhood, you were like, well, what is this transferable skill in the workforce?
That's literally how I felt. Yeah.
And you said you got rejected by like 100 companies or something.
Yeah,
when
40
companies.
Yeah, 40 companies, yeah.
And it's like, I didn't think I had transferable skills. You didn't think you had. A lot of people probably don't think that way. And most people, when they finish university or college, they don't use that degree 5 to 10 years later. They're moving on to different things eventually, right? So even if you got a degree in something, you probably won't use it in 5 to 10 years fully in that area. And so I think you got to figure out, what are the, how do I describe it? Kind of like invisible assets, right? The invisible assets that you have acquired throughout your entire life that maybe you're not even aware of. Mm-hmm. For me, an invisible asset was curiosity. It's not like I have this tangible currency that I can like use to build an opportunity in my life, but it was an invisible currency, an invisible asset. I was so curious about other people. Another invisible asset, I was a pretty joyful human being. And anytime I entered a room, and everyone was always older than me and more talented and more successful, I just said, I'm going to bring so much joy and curiosity. That doesn't seem like a transferable skill. Yeah. People would be like, they just wanted to help me. And I was this 24-year-old punk that was just like entering these networking events and these social media conferences and these rooms around all these kind of thought leaders. And really people that I was like, wow, they're like successful mentors of mine. And they're always like, hey, Lewis, why don't you come join us for dinner? Hey, that's pretty cool. You're doing this. Let me help you here. And I brought curiosity and joy. I never talked about myself. I would just ask questions that I was fascinated by. And people loved to share these stories about themselves. That was a currency. That was an invisible asset that I brought to the table. So you got to think about, what are the powers that you have that maybe you don't think you have? And also, I'm a big fan of figuring out where you are most powerless and creating a list of all your fears. I call it the fear list.
Yeah, I want to get into that.
Yes, this is the place where you feel the most powerless. Yeah. So for me at the time, I felt like my biggest fears and where I felt most powerless was standing in front of a room of peers. I could not stand up and speak in front of 5 people without stuttering, stumbling, sweating, and just forgetting everything that I wanted to say. So I always felt insecure when I had to stand up and present in front of people. And I always felt like, man, I'm just messing up and people are laughing at me and I'm not good enough. I'm not as smart as everyone else. I'm not as good as a presenter as everyone else. So I had this incredible crippling fear. And yet I knew one day I wanted to be able to impact people in some way, whether it was a career or something else. And so I found a mentor who was a professional speaker. I found a mentor with a model that I wanted to mimic. He was a professional speaker, and he said, you gotta overcome this fear. A way to do that is go to Toastmasters, a professional speaking class that you can go to. And he told me exactly what to do. I want you to go every week for a whole year. It's gonna suck the first few months. You're not gonna feel good. You're not gonna like it. It's gonna be embarrassing, and you're not gonna feel good about yourself. But I'm telling you, if you do this every week for a year, you will create unbelievable things in your life. And it was true. Never in my wildest dreams would I think I'd get paid what I get paid to speak publicly now. So what was once something that made me feel so powerless, I made it a superpower. But the only way I could do that was finding someone or some model or mentor to give me some guidance or that I could mimic, and then taking action on the fear over and over again until I embraced it and became the Batman of public speaking. You know what I mean? It's like you've got to, whatever the fear is for you've got to become Batman in that experience.
Yeah.
You've got to live in the dark. You've got to wear a bat suit and embrace that fear 100% until you can sit there peacefully, for me, on a stage in front of an audience.
Yeah.
And that took years.
Yes, yeah.
You want to develop more superpowers in your tool belt. You want to lean into that. And I had a ton of fears and a lot of insecurities. So it took me many years to start practicing on this and overcoming it. And I still get to step in more of them. The work never ends.
Yeah.
So that's the second thing. You figure out what you're interested in, your passions, your powers, and overcoming your fears to make them superpowers. And the third one is figuring out what problem do you want to solve. This is something you talk about so much. And one of the reasons why I love your work, Jay, is because you're always asking people to think differently. You don't have to be the one who's the entrepreneur or creating the thing. There are so many great causes, teams, businesses, and companies that have missions that you can be a great team player and use your passion and your power to support that problem. And I think that's what you got to be looking for. And it may not always come to you, in your 20s, early 30s. It may evolve. There are different seasons of life that you can use these passions and powers to solve problems. So you don't have to have it all figured out at 25 or 31. Just like give yourself a break and keep enjoying life along the way.
Yeah, I love the 3 Ps, and I hope that everyone, when you get the book, I want you to spend a really big chunk of time figuring out those 3 Ps.
Yeah.